I got the time right here. I got the time right now. Uh-huh. That's right. Time is all I got right here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in the internet world, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you tune in to get the real scoop. My name is Don Strong. I am here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I am interviewing Brother David from Brooklyn.
Time, she's my friend.
We're talking about the essential building block of life. Everybody needs a place to live. You need good housing in order to go out in the world and face what's there, and to just to just to survive, to thrive. We want to do more than survive. We want to thrive. You need good housing for that. So, Brother David, talk to us about housing. What's the situation?
Well, housing, I feel, that's a right that people should have for housing. And I'm going to present actually some revolutionary suggestions. I feel that we should get to the point where everyone is entitled to housing. Now, by that I mean that the powers that be, the government that's in force, should be able to build housing. You might call it public housing. Housing that would not only be for people who are at the bottom of the totem pole, but housing for everyone. Housing for everyone is gives people entitlement to housing, regardless of their income. Now, this type of public housing would mean that if you wanted housing and you had a substantial income, you could have your own private housing, or you could have public housing, and you would pay according to what your income was. So everyone would have housing and be able to live in housing, and everyone's housing would be based on income. So there should be no shortage of housing. And that does not mean that some people who wanted private housing, private apartments, private housing, they could certainly do that. But in the event you wanted to live in public housing should be available to all people and based on one's income. So that's I'd say a revolutionary point of view, but I think it's important, and that would deal with the problem of the lack of housing for many people. There should be no situation like this with the people who are homeless roaming the streets and the subways and all over the country. So this is an important thing to me, and I'm sure that this would work, because even the rich people who wanted public housing would have to pay accordingly to their income. So this is my idea on housing.
Okay, so as you're talking, it reminded me of one of the former mayors of New York City, the Honorable Ed Koch, who you probably remember, rather colorful figure. And I recall that he lived in the Village, the West Village, which is a very expensive place to live in Manhattan. And he lived in a rent-controlled apartment. This was a guy, probably as mayor of New York, he pulled down a pretty decent salary. And he is taking up the space in an apartment that maybe a family could have lived in. What do you have to say? It's like people who have a lot of disposable income to put into housing, why should they be entitled to public housing?
I feel that everyone should have some entitlement. I feel that way because it'd be fair, because those people who were in that position of high income and whatnot would have to pay accordingly to what their income was like. This would not preclude those people who did not have that type of income from having housing. It wouldn't be a question of one person who was a high income earner having housing and another one who was a low income earner not having housing. There'd be enough housing available for everybody. So that wouldn't be a problem for me.
Okay. Can you think of some government or some country that has a housing system similar to what you're proposing here that works?
I think they have a housing system like that in other countries. I believe they have a good housing system in Austria, so that does exist.
Okay.
So that would prevent any situation like we have now with people roaming the streets homeless. So that's the way I look at it.
Okay.
And that would solve the house. And see, it could be done. Um, if you think about all the wasted money that is spent in the favor of the ruling class, especially in terms of warfare all over the world. So
Right.
we need to scare people rather than having wars, endless wars all over.
Absolutely. As you're talking, I was thinking back to the Depression years, when they had like these public service type projects, when there was, because of the collapse of the stock market, there was this enormous unemployment, and the government decided, well, we're going to have these public works projects, we're going to build dams, we're going to have conservation corps, we're going to build parks, etc. Um, you and I both love to go to Lake Sebago up there in Harriman State Park, and that whole complex was constructed using the labor of people who normally would have been out of a job, would have been probably homeless, have no
Yeah,
place, no place to live, nothing to eat. And so you had thousands and thousands of workers who were involved in these projects to work on infrastructure or somehow revitalize the country. And then it was almost kind of military because they had barracks and stuff, right? So the government provided housing, and
right.
the able-bodied men had to go and lift the bale and tote the shovel and stuff, and do the work. And it was an honorable thing. And it seemed, uh, from what little I know of it, it seemed like it was a positive solution, maybe, to extreme poverty and homelessness. What do you think?
Well, I think that's an excellent idea. You're talking about WPA, Work Progress Administration, during the Roosevelt days. Furthermore, I talked about housing, but you're getting into jobs. I would make it a right for everyone to have a job. There's no such thing as joblessness. If you are not on a job with a private entity, there's always going to be a job with a public entity. And all kinds of infrastructure things and needs that we have in this society. So everybody would have a job. There's a guaranteed job for all people. And this is another thing that would be part of my readjusting the way things are done. There's no such thing as can't find work, because there'll be a job for everyone, just like during the Roosevelt administration with the WPA. There'll be a job with all kinds of things that needs to be done in this society for the benefit of the people who live in this society. So the Work Progress Administration, and always a way, no one can say, I can't find a job, because there will be always a job.
Sounds good. So let me see. How old is Bernie Sanders now? 78?
Bernie Sanders, he's up in the 70s somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's like about 78. I don't know. Have you considered maybe throwing your hat in the ring?
Well, I think I'd do a wonderful job.
I think so.
Yeah, I've thought about it. So,
Well, I'd vote for you, and I know a lot of your fans would vote for you. So thank you again, Brother David from Brooklyn, for speaking with us, and we'll be in touch again soon. Watch for new shows every week on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
I got the secret here in my shirt pocket. You can have the time you're needed. You can just float with me. Ride it up, baby, ride it, baby. Ride it up like the sea.